I believe that scarcity brings creativity. And so when you don't have the resources, you can be really creative.
So you have a passion for fitness and the desire to start your own business, but launching a massively successful fitness business is extremely complex. The systems, operations, hiring, firing, coaching, sales, and marketing are critical to success. Where do you even start? This show will give you the answers. Here is Bedros Keuilian and Bryce Henson, your hosts of the Fitness Franchise Podcast, a show dedicated to helping fitness entrepreneurs launch and grow successful gyms.
Welcome back, my friend, to another incredible episode of the Fitness Franchise Podcast. And before I tee up today's guest, I want to give you a friendly reminder to give us a like and subscribe on YouTube and write us an awesome review on iTunes. That way we can keep producing this content for you for free. So now to tee up today's guest, who's a dear friend of mine, who's also a level 4 Olympic level boxing coach. She's been featured on NBC, CBS, ABC, and Fox. Also the infamous Fear Factor and Fit to Fat to Fit. She's also been on the cover of Muscle and Fitness Hers. And today you're going to learn the foundation of entrepreneurship and battling through adversity. Welcome to the show, my friend, Miss Cary Williams. Cary Williams, welcome to the show.
Well, hello. Well, of course I'm here. Bryce.
Excited to have you, and we've been putting this together for a little bit of time, so thanks for making the trip, and we're so excited, especially you got a fellow fitness pro with me, so a lot to talk about today. And the first question that I always like to tee up for our audience is, I want to hear the backstory.
Wow. My backstory is really backwards of, usually you have an athlete who becomes a coach and then a gym owner, and mine was completely opposite. So I opened my first boxing gym in 1998, so a long time ago. This was way before boxing and fitness actually went together as one word. So we had the boxing gym where you were a competitive fighter, and then we had Tae Bo. So you can kind of reference when that was.
Oh, yeah.
I thought, why not offer something where people could learn boxing authentically, learn how to box, but they don't want to get hit, right? Nobody was doing it. And I said, well, why not some boxing classes? So I hired a head trainer that had boxing experience, because I didn't have any. And I didn't have any business experience. And I actually didn't have any fitness experience either.
Really?
I pretty much I got a degree in environmental science. Okay. So nothing that had to do with fitness or the body.
Then what really sparked your passion aside from seeing the opportunity?
You know what? It was more of the opportunity to do something that hadn't been done, which is what I guess the entrepreneur spirit is. And I thought, well, I don't know how to do these things, but I can bring somebody in that knows how to do those things. And I am just a very creative person. And I have a knack for creativity. So I was able to, well, this is before Google too, by the way. So I was able to pre-sell by passing out flyers at events and, all sorts of boots on the ground type of marketing that, you don't do now because we're all online.
Yeah, well, I feel like there is still an opportunity though for some good grassroots marketing because everything's shifted so much online, but
yes, so true. Yeah. And basically the first year of business, I did $100,000 and was blown away. I come from very humble beginnings, never had any help from friends or family, and kind of did it all on my own. And I bought the business Plan for Dummies book.
Okay.
That's how I wrote my business plan. And I went to a bank and I got a feel good loan, which is what the loan officer told me. He said, I feel really good about what you're doing and that you're going to pay the bank back. And so I'm going to give you a loan. And that's kind of how it all started. And here I am with this Primetime Boxing and Fitness Club. And then all of the folks started coming in and, doing their training. They're learning how to box. I opened the gym, my first gym in the neighborhood I was from, which was, it was a low-income neighborhood.
Near Sacramento?
Yeah, in Sacramento, which is where I'm from. And it's in Del Paso Heights, which is the kind of a rough side of Sacramento.
Okay.
And opened there. So there were a lot of kids in the neighborhood that needed an outlet. And they saw the boxing gym and they wanted to learn how to box, and it was a really great opportunity to get them in off the street and give them activities.
And the brand of the gym was Primetime Boxing that you created?
Yes, Primetime Boxing and Fitness.
Primetime boxing and fitness.
Right.
All right, fair enough.
Before that was even a thing. And so a lot of kids started coming in, and then next thing you know, there was a boxing team. We have a youth boxing team, and we're getting really busy, and the head trainer says, I need you to hire another trainer. I can't do it all myself. And I was kind of a penny pincher, and I said, I can do it. Show me what to do. And so he said, all right, well, I'll show you how to be a trainer. So the next thing you know, I'm a boxing coach.
Look at that.
And so I'm in the corner. There's these kids fighting, and I'm in their corner telling them what to do. And I stepped back and thought, that's kind of hypocritical. You know, how can I tell them how to do it or what they're feeling, what they're going through if I hadn't gone through it myself? I was a scrappy kid because I grew up in a tough neighborhood, but I didn't box in the boxing ring, which is a sport.
Yeah.
And I said, well, I want to fight then. And so I started training to compete, and then I became a competitive boxer.
Wow. How long did that take you?
You know, I learned so much through the process of everything, of watching and coaching, that when I finally started training myself, it wasn't as long of a process, I think, as somebody who just steps into a boxing gym. So after starting to train myself, I had my first fight about a year after I started training.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good on you. You're a quick study, quick learner.
Yeah.
Before we actually go there, I want to take a step back when you're launching Primetime, and you said a lot of it was grassroots marketing and all that. Like, you know, I was curious how you create your business plan, but you laid that out in Business Plans for Dummies. You were able to get a loan from the bank, a feel-good loan. What sort of like material or I guess application did you have to provide in order for you to get funded by $100,000?
Well, I did a lot of research, and I realized that going through the SBA was the best route, and I believe it was a 7A loan, and it was a $40,000 loan is what I ended up getting. And it was really just having that business plan, fairly solid as to what I thought this was going to look like. And it had a lot to do with the way I presented it.
Yeah.
I think that was really it. I mean, I could have come in with one piece of paper, but it was my passion for what I knew I was going to make happen. And he knew that.
And did you know the banker previously?
I did not.
So you showed up, just did your research,
Right.
buttoned up, but ultimately kind of coming off the street with a lot of passion, energy, vision, and also, a business plan that you put together to provide some sort of confidence that, getting approved.
Right.
Good on you.
And I think I had $5,000 in savings.
Good on you.
So, yeah.
And then walk us through the journey in terms of building out the gym and the design and all that. And the reason I ask is that, the audience of the show are interested in starting their own fitness businesses and, everything from marketing to design to creation, it all goes into it. So we'd love to peel back the onion there.
Yeah, for sure. Back then it was a little more challenging, I think, as a woman to kind of go out and look for a building. I think I was 25, 26 at the time. And so here I am, wet behind the ears, and I'm, going, hey, I want to look at that building, and I'm going to open a boxing gym. And it was mostly men who were the realtors, and they would kind of scoff at me and, yeah, okay, whatever. But there was one realtor who was a woman, and she just thought it was just the coolest thing what I was doing. And she really, really helped me find the right space. And I chose the location I did because in that neighborhood where I was from, they were doing a lot of redevelopment. They had a lot of incentives. And so I was on such a shoestring budget, $40K. What can you do with that, right?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, so I took advantage of a lot of that, a lot of rebates they had for signage, for lighting, for just all sorts of different things.
So just being resourceful.
Really resourceful. I believe that scarcity brings creativity. And so when you don't have the resources, you can be really creative.
Totally. My wife in Brazilian, there's a kind of a quote saying, when there's a lack of resources, you have to become resourceful. And I think you just glow that. And also too, we were talking off scene, natural born entrepreneurs, or at least you can acquire a skill to be an entrepreneur, but you do have to have creativity and vision and really that resourceful skill. Would that be fair to say from your perspective?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think entrepreneurs entrepreneurship is, some of it's innate. I believe that some of us are just kind of born with that. And I think some of it's also learned, right? You can learn it. But, I don't know that I so much buy into the entrepreneur school necessarily, because if you don't have drive and you don't have some sort of a creative mind, it's really hard to get that, or for somebody to teach you how to be that way.
Totally.
So I think that it's kind of a combination.
Okay, cool. Well, let's go back to the story. And as you were kind of getting things off the ground, became a trainer, and then, became competitive, but continue on.
Yeah, so then I was boxing, and I didn't compete very long. For me, it was something that I wanted to prove to myself that I could do, but also that I had that credential. So if I'm training somebody to be a fighter, I need to at least say, well, I've stepped into the ring.
Totally.
I know what it's like. So it was really important to me to have that in my repertoire. Like, I needed to have that in my bio. So I didn't fight for very long. And all this time I was thinking of growing. I was thinking about, well, I make this much money at this gym. What if I have 2 gyms? And I can make double that, right? So I started thinking about opening a second location. And then I did.
Okay.
And
just from a timeline perspective, I know 98 is when you got started, but this is a few years later after that. Like, what time frame are we on right now?
It was probably about 5 years in before I started thinking about a second location.
5 years in the first location.
First location.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I started thinking I want to grow. At first, it was just I'm opening a boxing gym. I mean, I came from nothing, and I never owned a business, so I'm just opening this boxing gym. And then you go, wow, I'm touching all of these people, like these kids, these adults. It's like this whole community, and I know you know what that's like.
Totally.
And you see all these crazy changes in people's lives, and they're thanking you, and it feels really good, all ages. And you go, well, shit, I can do this again. I can touch more lives, and I can make more money. It all goes hand in hand.
Totally.
So I started looking at different areas that were, maybe about 25 miles outside of Sacramento, a little more suburb. And then I opened my second location in Roseville, California.
Okay.
It was like Roseville, Rockland.
The distance was about a half an hour?
Yeah, about half an hour.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I had learned from the first gym, and so I was like, well, I've got to do pre-sales. And now, we have more. There was more available online.
Totally. Actually, let's unpack that as well, because again, this is like so spot on. We're in different types of fitness, but really, like, there's so many now, so many things that complement each other. When you do pre-sale, like in the boxing gym space, like what were you pre-selling? Is it a short-term membership, which turns into a long-term membership? Like, how does that sales process work from your perspective?
Yeah, so when I started to get to the second and third location, I started to think about packages more so.
Okay.
The first one, it wasn't even a thought in my mind.
Okay.
It's just like a learning process that you go through.
Oh, yeah.
And the one thing I didn't want to do is offer free. I did learn that when you do free, then the value is not there for somebody. And so I felt like it's a package, but you're getting your trial, but you're getting a 2-for-1.
Okay.
And that's your trial, is your 2-for-1.
Like 2 sessions or 2 months?
Two sessions. And then when we talk about packages, it was always, you're going to get your 4 months. You're only paying for 3, but you're going to be able to come for 4 months. So you're going to get a month for free. So it was always kind of adding that extra, you're going to get this for free, but I want you to pay for this. This is how long I want you for.
Just like stacking the value in terms of the offer, but going back to the premise, like, and I buy into this philosophy as well, is like people who pay attention. So by exchanging energy, then they're committed, and therefore they'll take your program seriously. And that's an entry point to get them the program. But of course, then if you can stack the value and offer more incentives, that's just more creativity and really extends the lifetime value and relationship with the client.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that's exactly what it did. And then you've got somebody who's there for 4 months. I mean, if they're for 4 months, they're going to be there probably for 4 years. Because if you were giving them a quality program, I mean, they're not going to leave. And if they do, they go somewhere else. and it's never the same.
And why?
And they come back.
And why is that? Like, what? And because I have some thoughts and something that we teach our Fit Body Bootcamp owners. But what about your program wasn't the same? That magic touch, and you didn't say it, but I could just feel like your energy in that, and that the way you delivered that. What was the experience that you offered?
It was a consistent boxing program where people could learn how to box in a simple way. It's a method, which is what the B&B method is, which is boxing and barbells. But it's really a method of teaching somebody from the ground up the fundamentals of boxing, but then taking that and expanding on it and adding in more value with added workout elements, whether it's drills or whatever it is. But that whole methodology of the process of teaching somebody that sport, nobody knows how to do that in a way that I know how to do that. And the way that I have trained my former trainers or my B&B coaches how to do that. And that's what the secret sauce is, because it's just nobody can combine this traditional, authentic sport with fitness and still stay true to the sport.
Interesting. Okay, well, we're going to dive into that a little bit later. I want you to continue, because I kind of interjected there in terms of the second location expanding, which again, a lot of entrepreneurs want to do when they realize they can make a bigger impact, they can have a bigger clientele list, make more money. I mean, it's a win-win. Like you said, things go hand in hand. So again, continued storytelling on that journey, and like, what are the things you did, and also some learning lessons along the way.
So continuing on, I already learned how to do lease negotiations. So I knew what a TI was, like all of these things. So you just learn so much from the first one.
Which TI stands for tenant improvement.
Tenant improvement.
And just to kind of provide some education as well, it's like whenever you go look at a lease, they potentially can give you lease abatement, meaning like potentially a couple months of free rent in the front end, right. Or they can give you a certain amount of money that they're going to invest in the property to kind of help you, with your build out to move in, right?
Exactly.
Cool.
And depending on how many years you decide to sign a lease for, obviously the longer, then they're going to give you a lot more incentives.
Yep.
And for me, even though I'm a risk taker, I still am not a huge risk taker. So that second gym, I signed a 5-year lease.
Okay. What was the first one?
I actually was a big risk taker and did a 5-year lease.
Okay.
The first one.
Well, good on you, because I did my first lease as a 3-year, and then now usually my most recent gym is 5.
Yeah, 5, yeah. Because I feel like you need to have more than a year or two to really, like, you've got to get your hooks into that community, right?
Oh, yeah.
And people need to know that you're going to be there. And, that's the other thing. Somebody could call you up and you're brand new and they're like, well, I don't know if you're going to be there next year, right? So you're like, no, I'm here for the long haul. Don't worry about it. We're here together. So
funny you say this, and we don't sell, and I'll kind of storytell from my first gym experience, and this is 10 years ago at the time of this taping, actually not quite 10, but ended up transferring ownership to 2 beautiful ladies after almost 10 years, as of yesterday, so all very recent. But in any case, one of our first clients, a dear friend to this day, she had been in the area for a while and checked out a few other competing gyms, CrossFits that actually went out of business. So offered her a paid in full, and she actually at first she stopped and she's like, I don't know if you're going to be here in 12 months. She was a private investigator, so she had a rap story of all of these other businesses that have came and gone. So I laugh to this day. We storytell that, end up signing her up for the program, and I said, the only reason I stay in business, of course, I'm saying this tongue in cheek, was that I was worried that you're going to use your private investigative skills if we close down to ask for your money back. So I was like, I had to be successful.
Because I wasn't going to give you a refund.
That's it. Or get hunted down and from her private investigative work.
Right.
But in any case, that's real. And to your point, really, you need a couple years to really put your hooks in your words and really build that community. Because from our perspective, at least in my experience of building fitness, people come for the result, but they stay for the community and the way you make them feel and the value you add in their life.
Absolutely. And that's one thing that I did learn, is that a lot of people will start a fitness program, whether it's boxing or boot camp, anything, because they initially want to lose weight, or they're going through a life change. One thing with boxing, and I don't know if it's just boxing, but one thing I did notice was a lot of people would want to learn how to box because they were going through a huge life change. They got a divorce, somebody passed away. It could be all these sorts of different things, but it's like, I always wanted to do boxing.
Do you think it's because, as well, my mind goes to like, if they're going through a life change or trauma, like it allows them to kind of release energy, kind of have that release from like an aggression perspective as well?
You know, I don't know that that's it. I do know that there were some people, or there are people who will come to boxing because they feel like they need to get aggressions out.
Okay.
They want to hit the bag, right? But back to what you said, they end up staying for different reasons. Mm-hmm. And it's because boxing is so cognitive. So it no longer is this mindless, like, oh, I'm just hitting the bag and I'm mad and whatever, I'm frustrated. Now it's like, oh, I'm trying to perfect my 1-2, or I'm trying to perfect my left hook. And so now their mind is just really engaged with
like
what they're doing.
And the mechanics of it.
Absolutely, okay. Yeah. And that's if it's taught in that manner.
All right.
But it brings them to within themselves. And now they have a mind-body connection, and they're a little more self-aware. So it brings a lot to the table for them.
And what about like the confidence and self-defense mechanism? And again, I haven't had a ton of experience in the boxing space, so I'm a student today. Mm-hmm. Is there an element of play of that as well?
Yeah, definitely. There are people who want to come in because they want to learn how to box for self-defense.
Yeah.
They want to feel confident.
Yep.
But what it ends up being, it's not necessarily like, boxing's not necessarily like you would go to a self-defense course. Like a woman would go, I'm going to go to a self-defense course, so if something happens on the street, I'm going to be able to defend myself. Mm-hmm. I'm going to kick them in the crotch. I'm going to do whatever, right? Mm-hmm. It's really that when they learn boxing, they feel confident.
Yeah.
And then what that does is that when they're walking down the street, that just exudes. And so somebody who might be, a predator, they're going to feel it and they're going to read that energy.
Totally. And I feel like even the schoolyard bullies or bad guys, they look for like the weakest prey. It's kind of like in the wild. I mean, we're literally like, you used to look at the African safaris and you see those like, videos, and the lions are like targeting like the weakest one of the bunch. And that's the same with people as well. And if you are timid and you have your head down and your shoulders down, like you exude an energy, like you might be a prime target. On the other side, if you're like shoulders nice and proud, if you're walking with energy and confidence, the bad guy, the increased probabilities that bad guy's going to stay away.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And that's exactly what happens. Yeah. And that goes for everybody, from the kids to women to men. It's across the board. But I don't know how many times that I had worked with a youngster, and just that simple, the parent would say, just that simple confidence that the boxing has given him or her has changed everything. The bullies just stopped bothering them.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, so it's pretty much that they come in for one reason or another, and then they stay for a different reason. Yeah.
Love that. All right, well, fast forward, you open your second gym, and then at some point, and again, look at my notes here, but you end up franchising, but I don't want to basically take the words out of your mouth, continue to storytell, and again, also to showcase the lessons that we've learned along the way.
For sure. So in the second location, then when you're franchising, you need a prototype. Mm-hmm. And so when I had planned to open that, I started thinking about franchising. And I thought, well, if I'm going to do this location, I want it to be exactly what I want every gym to be from here on out.
Yep.
And so I put a lot of energy into that, and I actually created my operations manual from that second location and opening the second location. And that went everything from pre-sales, like how am I going to do my pre-sales, to, what are my membership packages? What's the flooring like? What's the POS? What's the countertop? Everything. And
let me interject here for a second for audience as well, just to build some empathy for, your journey on doing this. It is so much, to design a space, to get the business off the ground. There's so many moving parts, and especially, being me in the business 10 years, but just from like the flooring, the little details, like devil's in the details, and it's so important in order for you to be able to replicate that. So I have a large amount of empathy for you to go through that process, because I've lived that for a long time. And let me tell you, friends, it is not easy. There is so much more than you think. So
it is a lot, yeah. But it was so useful. It was something that allowed me to create the operations manual, and so I didn't have to outsource that. I wanted to own it myself, and I wanted to dive in and know it so well in and out that when I franchised, it was there,
Yep.
and I knew just like that what needed to be done, and if I got a question, I knew how to answer it. So that was really important. And so operations manual, and then I've got the gym open, lots of members coming in. And I said, well, okay, the next step is, in California, you have to register in California to sell franchises, and it's very costly.
Very, very costly.
So I was like, why am I not in a non-registered state to franchise?
And to give our audience a little visibility, because I had no idea, going into this, and I don't know the exact number. I think 17 rings a bell, but I'm not totally sure. But the vast majority of states that you can just file for the franchising, and of course there's fees and all that, but they accept your application. But I think there's 17 states. The number's not totally exact, but California's one. New York's another, all the major states that get a lot of business slack for being hard on business. Yeah. But you have to file the application, and there's like an extended process in addition to all the fees. So it's definitely not an easy thing to really validate your perspective.
Yes, your FDDs. I mean, there's a lot of paperwork that needs to be done, and then you have to have everything audited. There's a lot.
Yep.
So I ended up. I did all this on my own, and I was making money off of the gyms, but I still needed a lot more to create the franchise company.
Totally.
And so I ended up pulling, a couple of loans. I think I had like an 800 credit score. I mean, it was over 800, I believe. And I was bringing in money. I had great credit, so the banks were just like, here, take as much as you want. And I did. I took what I thought I needed to start the franchise company. And this was about 2006, I guess, something like that. And then I spent a bunch of money on marketing, going to trade shows, tens of thousands of dollars.
Because at this point, you've had the concept for Prime Time Boxing and Fitness. Like, you've had your second location, you've poured all this now time, energy, and focus to have the vision to build this as a franchise where you have the prototype, you've created all that. Now you're basically taking more loans to fund the franchising engine, which again, just validating Cary's point, it's a lot. And now you're basically getting the franchise off the ground in terms of marketing and just really, doing all the things you need to do to get it off the ground.
Right, sales, marketing and sales, they go together. And so then I sold my first franchise. But the funny part was I sold the first franchise to one of my members. Which I'm sure happens often, right? Because they know the product, quote unquote, and they know what it is, and it has a lot of value to them because it did a lot for them, and so they want to pay that forward.
To give you an example, I just told you that two ladies assumed ownership at my first location, and they were part of the brand, different location, but they already been in the process for 4 years and had that emotional touch to the business. So to your point, that's just another piece of validation that we're working through together. So I love that.
Yeah. So it ended up being a gentleman that was a member, and opened it on the other direction of Sacramento, which is by Folsom, by El Dorado Hills, we were talking about earlier.
Okay.
And opened it, was doing great. This was like 2007.
Then this is your first franchise location that your previous client is basically owning and running.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes. So first franchise location, and that was going great. And then I remember there was a company. Well, I won't say a company; it was a person, but they were kind of a group of people that wanted to do an area development agreement in Puerto Rico.
Okay.
And so, did a lot of back and forth with them, and finally decided, okay, great, let's do it. And so wrote up our agreement. We're just getting ready to, sign, and then the housing market crashed. And I had
This is about 2008-ish then.
Yeah, about 2008 then, by then.
The kickoff of the Great Recession.
Yes.
Okay.
So it pretty much every person that was wanting to buy a franchise that was showing interest, ones that we were already working on agreements, they all just, they were gone, you know. Either the banks weren't going to fund them, or they lost their retirement in the stock market because of the crash. You know, there were just so many different factors. And I said, oh shit, like, you know, what? Now what? I have this huge debt. I had 2 houses. I had my home, and then I had a rental property, and they were completely upside down. I mean, just, you know, not even worth, you know, half of what they were before. Anyways, so I had to kind of really sit back and go, well, what am I going to do? You know, when I look at the numbers, and I'm like, well, if I'm making payments on all of this, it's going to take me my entire lifetime to pay this back. And then what am I doing? You know, and the franchise, he had a construction company, the franchisee, and it went, whoop, gone. And he filed bankruptcy, and then he basically was like, here's your gym back. So
fun times in the life of an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
You know, especially dealing like it is tough because a lot of those factors are just simply outside of your control. Like, you know.
They really were.
Yeah.
They really were. And I like to be in control. So it was really hard for me.
Yep.
So I took it back, and I ended up closing that location down. I kept the 2 corporate ones that I had. And they weren't doing well because, you know, nobody had any money to do, you know, the training cost, you know, it's a premium program.
Yep.
So, you know, they're paying $300 a month. And now all of a sudden it's like, oh, I can't pay that.
Yep.
So I just kept them open for my staff to have work. You know, it was like they had families. So I was just hustling to try to make that happen. And still every day I would look and go, I just don't see how this is even possible that I'm going to be able to pay this back. And what am I doing? I'm just kind of spinning my wheels. I can't grow because I'm not making enough money myself to put into something else. I can't get a loan. So it took me like another year or so of processing that. And then I finally decided to file bankruptcy. And it was one of the hardest decisions I've ever made. Really hard.
Well, thank you for sharing, and that's a tough situation. But you know, many of our audience can probably relate. So, you know, when you look at that and you hit obviously a big low, looking back at the experience, like what were the biggest like highs and like proudest accomplishments in those moments, and then what were the biggest lows and really learning lessons that would be really valuable to our audience?
You know, I think the high was really going to figure out that making that kind of decision, not to look at what you think people think of you. And then when you finally do it, it's just like this huge just weight is gone. And it's like this whole new fresh start. Just kind of taking everything else away, all these external factors. And that was really enlightening, and it felt really good. But still, I mean, on the same note, the biggest low was that I actually had to do it. You know, you feel like a failure. And as an entrepreneur, that's a really hard pill to swallow.
Like going through the bankruptcy process in of itself.
Yeah, the whole process. And I was raised like my father was always, you know, like, your credit is important. You have to go to college. You need to have security. You know, your credit score. I mean, it was always like implanted in my brain. And so to kind of get past that was really hard. But it was one of the best things I ever did.
Just to go through that process and then free yourself up for the next adventure. Yeah,
and I would say also really important to do research about different types of bankruptcy and you know, I would say loopholes, but different ways you can go about it to where you can still maybe have your business or maybe have another business. There's a lot of different ways to go about bankruptcy to where you're not going to end up with absolutely nothing. So taking the time to do that on your own.
And did you hire someone or consult with someone, or is that just research that you did on your own?
Yeah, I hired a bankruptcy attorney, and you know, he kind of said, he would give me little tidbits, and he said, look at this, research this. So he was giving me the information, but wanted me to thoroughly research everything. And I did for a whole year. I mean, I did for a very long time, because I was also trying to figure out what was I going to do next. You know, I go, well, we'll file bankruptcy, but then what? So within that process, I had to go, well, okay, well, what is the next step for me? What do I want to do? And you kind of come to an epiphany too. What makes me happy, and what am I doing here? You know, what's my purpose in life? So
makes you ask a lot of tough questions. And also too, you got to think, and I'm putting myself in your place, but you know, you're very high in life, you're starting achieving success, you have this vision, and then some uncontrollable, unforeseen circumstances come to the table, and then you're battling with the reality of like, oh my goodness, what I've built is now not the case anymore. So you're like going through this internal trauma, trying to figure that out, trying to look at other options, trying to see if you can salvage it, and then you realize that probably not. So there's a lot of factors at play, I would imagine. It's easy to kind of look 15 years behind or 10 years later, but that's a lot of stuff you're processing, and I would imagine why it took you a solid year. Yeah,
it did. It took a while. But you know, then it gives you, I guess, the peace of mind that you made the right decision. You know, if you do that research and you really kind of simmer it, you got to really, really think about, okay, what happens when I do this? So it's a thought. It's not something that you just do.
The process.
It's quite a process if you want to end up on the right end of it.
And that's the second time hearing this. Like, you must have a really good eye for research, or just doing your diligence between, you know, launching or doing the research previously in your story when you got your boxing gym off the ground, and then obviously the franchising piece, and then the bankruptcy piece. So there's something to be said for that.
Yeah, research is key, right? Yeah. I mean, I guess I learned that in college, so good thing I went to college, right?
There you go. What's the famous saying, carpenters, like, measure twice and cut once? I feel like that's like the philosophy of researching.
It is, yeah.
What's up, my friend? Bryce here. Now, you might know me as the co-host of this podcast and the CEO of FitBody. But what many people don't know is that I actually began my journey as a FitBody franchise owner. Now, being an owner, I wake up every day absolutely doing what I love. I live my passion. I help people transform their lives and have both financial and personal freedom. And it's for these reasons and many more that other owners join the brand and open their own FitBody locations too. So if you're looking to build a highly profitable business, take charge of your life, and create an impact in your very own community, then opening a FitBody gym might be a perfect fit for you. Now, to see if a territory is available in your area, as we have very limited spots due to our incredible growth, go ahead and visit our website at fbbcfranchise.com to complete an application. Well, thanks, and back to the show.
All right, well, where do we go from here? I'm dying to kind of jump into boxing and barbells, but are we there yet?
Very close. So bankruptcy, okay, that's done. But right before I did file, I decided I was going to move to Santa Monica from Sacramento. So that's a really big move. I was in Sacramento my whole life. I went through a divorce, and it was one of those moments where I just needed to completely start over.
And why LA? And for our viewers who are not familiar with Southern California, I guess, because Sacramento's in Northern California, it's a solid, we were talking off camera, anywhere from 6 to 8 hours, depending on traffic. Same state, but very different culture. Like Sacramento's in the north part of the states, right. LA is obviously in the south. So it's if you're not listening to this from California, you're probably thinking, well, I don't get it, just a little move, but it's definitely a very big change.
Yeah, big change. Northern California and Southern California are like two different states. So it was a big move. I didn't know anybody in Santa Monica. I didn't have family.
Why'd you pick LA?
So I wanted to train celebrities, I thought, but
that would be a good place to be.
Right. The first year I had my gym, I actually, I learned how to do press releases pretty well, and I got into Shape magazine. And they flew me to Santa Monica for the photo shoot.
Good on you. And I mean, I have my rap list here with, all the muscle and fitness, hers, and all the publications in Fear Factor as an example, which I'm going to actually talk to you about in the lightning round, but I was curious on how you're able to get on these publications, and it's because you mastered the art of writing press.
Yes.
Okay.
So I did lots of, again, research on how to do press releases and figure out my hook, my angle. And me being me and doing boxing was definitely a pretty good angle. It was something that was not normal. And so it helped me to get into a few fitness publications.
Good for you. Yeah, good on you. That's awesome.
So when I went for the photo shoot, it was in Santa Monica. And it just, I don't know, it just kind of stuck out to me because when I went, I didn't know what Santa Monica was.
And you weren't living there. It was just literally for the shoot.
Yeah,
Okay.
I was in Sacramento still.
Okay.
So I thought, well, what is this Santa Monica? I thought I was going to LA. What's Santa Monica?
Nice.
Well, it's better than LA, you know? I mean,
It's probably one of the better parts of LA for sure.
right. So it's just kind of stuck with me, I guess. And I wanted to be still in California. I wanted to be somewhere where fitness was a thing also. And Santa Monica is pretty big on fitness.
Oh, yeah.
So that's, kind of all of those different things came to mind when I was looking for where I wanted to move. And the beach was nice. So.
Yeah. Not a bad spot.
Yeah.
All right, so you show up and what happens?
And so I looked for space. I drove back and forth from Sacramento almost every weekend to look at spaces. And I didn't know if I was going to be able to get an apartment. So I wanted to make sure my space had like a living quarters up top, like a little studio. And I found one. It was perfect, except it wouldn't fit a boxing ring. And I was so devastated. I was like, but this is perfect. But I can't put a boxing ring in because it was too narrow.
Okay.
And I was so adamant about this damn boxing ring I had to put in there, even though I wasn't going to train fighters anymore. And it finally I bit the bullet and I said, you know what? I'm not going to have a ring. I'm just forget about it. This is, it's a new page in my life and I'm not going to have the boxing ring. So I went ahead and signed a lease and then I moved and I built out that gym studio. I mean, it was literally like 1,500 square feet. It was pretty small. Beautiful brick wall, vaulted ceiling. And then I designed that space myself, and it was called the Stables, which means, in boxing, a stable is a stable of fighters. So when you have like a group of fighters in a gym, that's the Stables.
Okay.
So it's kind of like horses, I guess.
Oh, yeah.
So I opened that and opened it and did extremely well. And I was a one-woman show. So no staff, no nothing. I just ran that gym all by myself.
Good on you.
And it was nice. Yeah, it was different.
And at that point, I mean, you went through a lot of trauma and challenge with, the previous few years, but like the value of, flexing your entrepreneurial muscles, you've already went through this process before, like the marketing, the sales, like the operation. So the beautiful thing is, I mean, it's never a light, you hate to make light of a bad situation, but at the end of the day, you learn from that. And it's to me, when I look at, hear your story, it's not a surprise. While you put the foundation earlier, you went through a tough time, but then you're able to rebound. Yes, and like you said, it's because I just learned so much along the way. Yeah. So I was able to have this great studio, and people came in to learn boxing, but in a systematic way. And do it for fitness. It wasn't necessarily, people weren't coming in to be, I got plenty of calls from fighters wanting me to train them. And I said, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm an Olympic level boxing coach as well. So I have a pretty good resume. Good but yeah, I just said, I'm not training fighters anymore. This is just for anybody who wants to come in, learn the beautiful sport of boxing and do it more for them mentally and physically. Yeah, fitness, health, move your body. Yeah. So rock and roll. So from that experience, then once you get that off the gym, is that where the methodology of boxing and barbells came to be? Yes. So I met Damien, who is an IFBB pro bodybuilder, and I met him about a year after coming to Santa Monica, and we started dating, and he's like, hey, you want to come lift weights with me? And actually, he told me my posture was bad. Uh-oh. And in a really sweet way. But in boxing, you don't really lift weights a lot.
and you're taught to have your shoulders rolled forward,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
And so this was this whole new thing for me, like, oh, I'm supposed to have my shoulders back and my chest out. And so he took me through his weight training program for a solid year or so. We would go to the gym and train together. And obviously I didn't lift as heavy as him, but he taught me how to lift. And I was amazed at what went into lifting weights. It was almost like boxing, you know, mechanically, like how to connect your mind to the muscle you're working when you're lifting, all these different things that I learned, and it was really eye-opening, and it changed my physique. A lot of injuries and like pains that I had felt from overuse of stuff from boxing were starting to diminish, just because I was building up, you know, strength and muscle. And I started to take what I was doing at the gym. So we would do sets, and when he was doing his, I would shadow box next to the machine. And then I'd do mine, and then...
You would switch while you were lifting weights, you would shadow box.
Yeah,
Oh,
he
wow.
would rest, and you know, but I would do my active recovery or whatever, and I would shadow box.
Oh, cool.
And I just thought, oh, this is really cool, and it was doing amazing things for me. So at my studio, I started incorporating more weights. And once I did, everybody just thought, this is awesome. Like, when are we going to do that program again? When are we going to do that class again? And so I went to Damien and I said, hey, I'm thinking about starting this, you know, creating this program, a class format, and certifying trainers to do this class. Can you contribute the weight training part of the course for me? Because, I mean, he's got the credentials, like that's his thing, right? And he's like, yeah, sure, let's do it. And so Boxing and Barbells was created, and it's a pretty amazing class format of boxing and weight training and some conditioning. And
now you certify other coaches and trainers within the system that they can implement at whatever type of gyms or facilities they're in, assuming they have access to weights and boxing.
Exactly, yeah. And it can be anywhere from, it could be a big box gym that does group fitness to boutique gyms that just have certain classes. It can be a boxing gym. I mean, I've worked with a lot of different gyms and a lot of different trainers that do the program, or maybe they get certified because they just really want to learn how to teach boxing the right way, in a systematic way. And they're not necessarily, they might not even do a Boxing Barbells program, but they go through the course because they want to get that knowledge and skill set.
Like continued education. And as a coach, you know, the more knowledgeable you are, whether it be fitness, modalities, you know, boxing and barbells, nutrition, you know, TRX courses, you just, you know, you want to continue to add tools to your arsenal. So I can see where a lot of, you know, fitness coaches, at least ones that have that growth mindset, would really take advantage.
Yeah, you'll get a lot of different coaches coming through. And the one thing they all do say, and this is across the board, these are people who have been in the fitness industry for 20 years. They've done every single certification. You can name all of them. And the one thing I always hear is that the course that I do for 2 days is the best one they have ever gone through. It's the most detailed. It provides the most information. And that just comes from them telling me. And a lot of them say I don't charge enough.
Look at that. Interesting. I hope you're getting a lot of documentation of social proof so you can continue to push that out and even charge more, I guess.
Yeah, right.
What would you say, like, in developing the program, like from a business perspective, even a fitness perspective, like your biggest learning lessons and I guess, you know, takeaways throughout that whole process?
In developing the program, you know, it's kind of figuring out, where is this going? Am I developing it for a coach who's training a fighter? Am I developing for a fitness person that's just going to do a cardio boxing class? Like, you kind of have to look at, like, what's your audience? But on the other end, when you develop as an entrepreneur, you also want to develop something that you're telling them they need. So this is what I'm developing. And if you're already doing boxing fitness, you need this for this reason. Or if you're just coaching fighters, you need this for this reason. And so still staying where I needed to be and bring my value to it, instead of everybody telling me what they want. Because that can be a big downfall, you know, for a lot of entrepreneurs in business. Because if you're just listening to everybody and what they want, You're never staying on that path of where you need to be. And they'll come if you have a good quality program. And that could go for a cert, it can go for a gym, for whatever.
Yeah, it's so powerful, and it is really like the double-edged sword. And on one hand, you need to listen to your customers because that feedback that they give you about things is really, really impactful. I feel like, my gyms and our franchise in general of the last decade has just, exponentially improved because of the feedback,
yes.
especially our owners and coaches in the ground floor, right?
Yeah.
But the other side of it is you have to have vision as an entrepreneur of like where you're going. You need to stay true to yourself. So there is that balance that you need to take into consideration, and it's definitely not an easy thing.
Yeah, and I think feedback is super important, and I always have them giving me feedback. They're always giving me feedback on, what can be better, what did you love, why did you come? All of these different, I think we all need to get feedback. I mean, whether it's for that, whether it's just, I think in life in general.
Sure.
But the feedback is really important. But at the same time, if someone comes to you and says, well, you know what, I loved it, but because maybe they couldn't afford it, it was too expensive for them. Mm-hmm. Or something. You can't take that feedback and go, oh, you know what, I'm going to have to make it cheaper.
Right.
So you kind of have to use the feedback that is going to move you ahead to benefit everybody else who's going to be doing the program.
Totally.
So yeah, there's certain feedback that you don't necessarily have to.
Yeah, in our world, I mean, we've gotten so much feedback from our clients and coaches that have been able to craft our program and create more of experience. But to use an example in the fit body world, like one of our secret sauces is our 30-minute session. So high intensity interval training for a half an hour. I mean, you're basically going full throttle, and that's actually like our secret sauce now. People love the program, but in the early days, we got a little kickback being like, oh, this should be longer. And if we would have listened to every single piece of feedback, our program, we wouldn't have stayed true to ourselves. So that's just another example on our side of the world.
That's absolutely true, because you can't please everybody.
Yeah.
But if you stick with what you're really good at, there are going to be plenty of people who are going to want to participate in it and take advantage of it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, you've shared a lot. I love the storytelling aspect because that's really connected, and also appreciate your vulnerability. We have another 10 minutes of time. I want to transition to lightning round so you can give more value to our audience if you're up for it.
Sure.
All right, rock and roll. Well, I think both of us being in the fitness industry, and I guess franchising for a little bit of space, but really fitness is a very passion-based business. Cary, what would you say today is your biggest passion and why?
Biggest passion. My biggest passion right now is taking my knowledge, all my blood, sweat, and tears, so to speak, and being able to give that knowledge to somebody else so that they don't have to go through it, especially for women. So I'm really passionate about helping female gym owners, female trainers, because the space is still, I mean, in boxing it's very male dominated, but even in this fitness space, as for a trainer or a gym owner, it's still pretty male dominated. So just giving them anything that I can, any kind of knowledge that they can take from me, I'm really passionate about helping them.
Love it. Next up, Zone of Genius. Like, what is factory installed, Cary, that you do really well, and that would be you consider your Zone of Genius?
Definitely being able to take my sport into the fitness space and keeping it authentic. It's just not something that you see, but also being able to, I guess, bring it together in a systematic way where it's really easy for people to learn. And I think that comes from being analytical and really, not even, 3 years ago, I learned how to teach how to throw the left hook better than I was doing it before. And I've been in this space for 25 years. So literally 3 years ago. And so it's like, wow. And now I pass that along.
And you can download that into your teaching.
Yeah, so that being able to do that is not something that a lot of people can do. Being able to take boxing traditionally and combine it with fitness without it losing its realness, its authenticity.
Its charm. Yeah, Love that. Next up, this is so I love this question because we're both fitness entrepreneurs. From your perspective, what's a unique value bomb that most entrepreneurs, and even say fitness entrepreneurs, should know before they open their business, but maybe they don't?
One thing that sticks out for me is that each time I would open a gym, I would be right before I would open, because you have to get your business license, and everybody knows you're coming, but not all the people that you want to know that you're coming. It's usually people who want you to pay for something. So you're getting bombarded with phone calls and emails, and everybody wants to sell you how to run your business, how to do this, how to do that. And it's really bad now. But I mean, even before, I'm even talking in like the early 2000s, it was just nonstop. And they always made you feel like you had to advertise. You needed to pay for this in order to be successful. And I got to the point where I asked them, have you ever owned a business? What do you know? So I would say one thing is like kind of just, if you're going to open something, you're going to get bombarded with a lot of people telling you need to pay for things. Ignore it. Ignore it.
I love that. The thing that really resonated with me is like, as you're fielding all these calls, is like, have you ever opened a business? And one of my big things, I love mentorship. I love coaching. I love books. I love grabbing mentors that can really time collapse what the goal I want to achieve. But the biggest caveat is they've already had to achieve what I want to go after. Because if they have, I'm here. If they have not, okay, then you can't take that advice. So I love that. And that was my takeaway from your takeaway.
Yeah.
You've talked a little bit about, very challenging situation, and it might have been, or it might have been something else, but two-part question. I want to tap into your insights on what's the lowest point, whether it be entrepreneurial life, and then the flip side, what's the proudest accomplishment? So kind of a two-part question.
First thing, lowest would be filing bankruptcy. That was the toughest thing I've ever gone through. So that would be the lowest point. The best, the highlight, I guess, that sticks out is probably two things. I think one is opening my first gym, because nobody thought I could do it. Growing up, people would say, oh, she's going to end up on drugs, pregnant, whatever. Like that was kind of what everybody thought was going to happen of me. And so opening that first gym felt really good. And stepping in the boxing ring the first time was quite an accomplishment.
Yeah, good on you.
Yeah.
All right, moving along, being in the coaching business, and I coach fitness in boot camp, and you coach in entrepreneurship, et cetera, and you coach same thing in fitness and entrepreneur space as well. You're in the business of giving really good advice. On the flip side, what's some of the best piece of advice that you've ever received, and why?
This is funny. It came from when I went through my divorce, but I remember this woman telling me, she said, you have to realize that it's not you. It's the other person. It's not you. You don't need to change. And it really, really struck me. It was like I wasn't the problem. I wasn't the problem. And it really goes for everything. It's like in business, if something's not working, it's not necessarily, it's because you're not doing something right, or it could just be the other person. So it really struck me, and it made me realize that I need to just kind of stay on my path and keep moving forward, and not have this external like negativity telling me that I need to be doing something else or I need to change.
Yeah.
So.
And the biggest way I hear this, especially being a fellow entrepreneur and like taking big risks in life, starting businesses, starting franchises, moving to different parts of the country, I think the context that I heard that in is you're going to a lot of people, and at least this is true for me and from the sounds of you as well, that want to tell you this is what you should do or this is the angle that you should play. And again, going back to the point, like feedback is important, and it's really important to kind of keep a white belt mentality. But at the end of the day, you got to stay true to you. You got to know who you are. You got to know your values, and you need to be able to like take the feedback, but filter it and know when you're on the right path. Because there's a lot of naysayers out there. There's a lot of people who are going to tell you what you should be doing.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's your life and it's your mission. It's your calling.
It's hard, and I will say, even with social media, there's a lot of people who just look at social media and they think they're doing one thing, and then they see everybody else doing all these. Oh, maybe I should do that. Maybe I should do that. No, you shouldn't. Just keep doing what you're doing.
Love it. next two questions. I'm a huge advocate of like habits are the really success for your life, and I know you would be as well, being in the space that we're in. What's a habit that you picked up over the years that's been really beneficial to your success?
Working out daily.
Amen.
Amen. Honestly, it's amazing. And I was the girl that didn't dress down for PE, okay? I did not like working out. So to be able to pick that habit up and work out every day, that's just been, life-changing.
Huge. The latter part of that question, leaders are readers, and personal growth is really important. What's been a book or a podcast or some sort of piece of outside content that has really made a big impact on your life that would really be helpful to our audience?
Before I even say that, I have listened to your podcast before, and I didn't even know that it was this, which like blows my mind, because I'll be on like the Stair Stepper and looking for a podcast to find motivation, and I listened to this one.
Oh, thank you.
So the book, Pour Your Heart Into It.
I haven't heard of it.
It's the book about Starbucks.
Oh, okay.
So about Howard.
Yeah.
And, it's funny. It just always sticks in my head. I read it probably within the first few years of opening my first gym. And it's just the story and the idea that he came into something. Starbucks was already created before he got there, but he kind of took it and ran with it. And he's like, you know what, we can't just keep doing this one thing. I want to bring something new in, something that hasn't been done. And then he goes off to, to Europe, and he brings back in the cappuccino or the whatever, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. And so that kind of out of the box thinking, I think it's just brilliant, and what he's done with Starbucks. And so pour your heart into it.
Love it. Big fan of the brand and the organization. And yeah. I'm not a big coffee lover, but I respect what they've done. I've never heard of the book, but pour your heart into it. I'm going to basically give it a read.
Yeah, it's good.
Cary, you are awesome. I want to thank you so much for being on the show. Before we go, I have one last parting question, and I always like to enlighten our audience who are interested in fitness. They're interested in business and entrepreneurship and personal growth, like trying to be better. Mm-hmm. From your life experience and your business experience, what would be that last parting piece of wisdom that you can share that they can get value from?
Never give a shit what anyone thinks of you. Ever. Ever.
Mic drop. Love that. Well, thank you so much. Before we go, I would love for our audience to stay connected with you. Where can they find you?
Yes. So social for Boxing and Barbells is boxing in, just the letter in, Barbells, all of the social. And for me, it's Cary Lee Williams, Cary like Cary Grant, Lee Williams. And my first name is not Cary Lee, by the way. It's just Cary.
Awesome. Please connect with our friends. Actually, and I have one more shotgun lightning round question, because we talked about off the scene, and I told you I was going to ask you. Give me the 1-minute overview of how you got on Fear Factor.
Oh, yes. So I applied for Fear Factor, and I don't even know how I don't know how I even knew how to apply, but I applied. I remember sitting in a videotape, and I didn't get a call back. And I was like, why didn't I get a call back? I should totally get a call back. And so I waited a few weeks or something. And then I was like, you know what? I'm going to do a new video. And so this new video I did was a little bit spicier. I put on my little workout shirt, and I did some shadow boxing, and I did the whole Thriller in Manila, to the camera. It's just really spicy. And they called me.
Awesome. What's your takeaway? What's your lesson to the audience there?
Man, never give up, If you don't hear back from someone, call them back.
Let's go. Cary, you are awesome. I had so much fun here, a lot of value, kindred spirits like fitness, entrepreneurship. I felt your pain. I feel your success. It's been an awesome journey and ride, and excited to get to know you more.
Yeah.
And friends, I know you got a ton of value. Assuming that you did, go ahead and give us a like and subscribe on YouTube, and write us an incredible review on iTunes. That way we can keep producing this content for you for free. So that's all today. Cary, thank you again so much. And friends, we will see you on the next episode.